Hi everyone, happy almost Labor Day.
Oh my gosh, we're already getting around to the weekend.
These are Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours.
Welcome. Even though they're on Thursday now, I'm still like, this means we're getting around to the weekend.
Yes, almost there.
Thank you for joining us. It makes me feel very grateful to see the numbers going up and the word getting out. So, join us, come back, watch part of it later if you need to, and please share, because it is something that we want to invite anyone and everyone to join the dialogue.
Yeah, I hope everybody takes a part of the process of what's going on in their local government, and I think these videos will really help answer questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the comment box or also email district1@ocfl.net. I'm Lee Perry, and I answer those emails, and I can't wait to hear from you.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we going to start with the... we should have segments, maybe like the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, well, we start bad, and I think we get good, and then bad.
Yeah, we need to hit some of the more, I think, pressing topics right out of the gate, knowing that there's still a health crisis going on. So let's just get into the numbers. What did we say? The latest rolling positivity rate is down from 20%, but it's at 17%, which is still really high. If you think that our lowest, I think we got to, was around 3%. When I thought, oh, this is it, we're coming out of this. So we still have a lot of work to do, getting those numbers down. The reality is, when we talk to our medical providers and the hospitals, the overwhelming majority, and I would say, 98% of people hospitalized with COVID right now are unvaccinated. So I know it is a frustrating thing to repeat myself again and again and again, but I'm going to do it. Yeah, there are breakthrough cases. We've been hearing about breakthrough positive tests, but that's very different than having to go into the ICU. And that's very different than needing oxygen. And that's very different than the kind of life support that goes into caring for somebody who hasn't been vaccinated. So there's a really, really big difference. Even if there's a breakthrough case in a vaccinated person, those people have mild symptoms and are better within days, but those people can spread. And so the reason why we're hearing about so much loss right now is because even if you are vaccinated, if you get some form of symptoms, and I mean, this is how lots of things that we inoculate against work, that there can be some form of that, you can then share that with an unvaccinated person who could die from it. So, I know there's a lot of conversations right now about personal choice making and personal decision. And listen, I'm all for individuals having a very private conversation with their physicians. But listen to me about this virus. It's different than the other ones because that decision affects the people around you. So I keep really impressing upon people that if they go into a business and a business owner has some kind of rule, or they work for a business and that business has some kind of a rule, they have to be respected because this virus doesn't stay in the person who's making those decisions. It spreads. And if you're making a decision not to get vaccinated, please go out with a mask or two, or stay home. Either way, no one's forcing you to do it. What we're asking you to do is, if you don't do it, don't go around other people because those people are dying. And sadly, we still don't have vaccines for people under the age of 12. So they don't have the choice to protect themselves from you if you've chosen not to be vaccinated and you're carrying this virus. So really, it's about thinking in a holistically, globally. It's about thinking about your neighbor. It's about being compassionate and kind. And it's also about science and reading the research, because I find that the people who are really getting in there and doing the digging and reading what's coming out of our peer-reviewed studies. These aren't anecdotal studies. So anecdotal studies are when we have a case study, somebody's cousin, someone's brother, right? A friend. Peer-reviewed studies are when the subjects include thousands, and in this case, millions of people.
Yeah. And I definitely want to shout out Dr. Wilson, who came and spoke on this subject last virtual office hour, which is now on the YouTube and being shared all throughout social media and on the NicoleWilson.org website. So please, if you have any questions, please ask. You know, we have a liaison from the Florida Department of Health who answers questions right away. We have a mobile vaccine trailer that can go into communities with limited mobility. There's resources.
Yes.
And especially with emergency rental assistance, there's resources that we can connect you to in webinars. So please contact District 1.
Yeah, we're not out of the hole. I think there's still, obviously, the economic toll is still really very real. So having the availability of that rental assistance feels like, you know, hopefully some hope on the horizon for folks. Please reach out about that. And then, you know, I want to make sure also, thanking Dr. Wilson for being here, my husband, but also saying that if you have, you know, a medical provider that you trust, that you know is well respected, reach out to them. I do think that sometimes if we hear it from, you know, a government official or the National Institutes of Health, that may not be sufficient to calm someone's nerves. But your own physician, or, you know, you could reach out to the people at Orlando Health or Advent Health that, you know, are really our cornerstone life-saving medical providers. I will say, talking to them here in Orange County, because we partner with them on many things, it's been devastating for the people that work in those ICUs, because they hear from people sometimes in the last few words that they have before they're intubated, I wish I'd been vaccinated. So it's hard for them to go through that knowing it was preventable. And then, you know, the other part that I'm concerned about that I want to touch on just really quickly, because it seems to be bubbling up because of social media and because of, I think, people's interest, obviously, in the ongoing research into treatments, is ivermectin. And I don't know if you have heard of this. It is an anti-parasite used on large mammals, not humans. There are, it's very concentrated in the way that it's distributed within the veterinary community. So those concentrations can be deadly for people. It has never been studied or approved for the treatment of COVID-19. And so, you know, if you're out there and you're weighing your risks and your benefits and you're trying to figure out what's best for you and your family, go with the one that's had millions and millions and millions of people that have
scrutinized it and tried it and participated.
And there are stories out there about people having allergic reactions to the COVID vaccine. But those are case studies. They're anecdotal, right? They are such a small percentage that the last time I asked if there was anybody in our hospitals anywhere from a side effect of COVID, there was decisively no, and kind of a head scratch, like, where would you have gotten that from?
Yeah.
So, that there was any side effect. There's not, as of the last time that I asked the hospital representative that was here. And so I think it's very interesting that those case studies get latched onto. Just scrutinize it. Really be careful about who, you know, if your news is coming from a source that
YouTube.
Yeah, that's just
anybody can post anything on YouTube. Anybody can post, but the science community is designed so that it's peer reviewed and fact checked and carefully scrutinized.
So, and you know, you don't have to believe us, right? Go to MayoClinic.com. Go to Cornell, Harvard, Yale, any of the major institutions where research takes place that isn't necessarily, you know, tied to a drug company, and see what the peer-reviewed articles are. Go to the American Medical Association. Go to the Journal of Pediatric Medicine. These are all places where you can confirm the scientific part of this or the data. So we'll leave that there, but we'll continue to try to share as much of that data and facts as possible. It makes me sad that we're not done. We should have been done. Or at the very least, we should have all been able to be at the point where it is kind of like a cold, right? We've had the vaccine. There may be people dealing with some form of infection, but the unvaccinated are still dying. So we're going to keep trying to get the information out there.
Yeah, and please make decisions with empathy. You know, at the end of the day, yes, your body, your choice, but also when you walk out the door, your decisions could impact other people.
And so your body, your choice, but if you're choosing to go into another building, and you're choosing to go into a workplace, or you're choosing to go into a concert, that you're sharing air. And much like the conversation when smoking was when they were trying to tell people that smoking is bad for you. And by the way, there were lots of people that were like, this is a conspiracy. There is no way that smoking is bad for me. I can't believe they would lie to me about this. Well, the argument really needed to come down to, well, it's okay. If you want to keep smoking, but you can't come over and blow it in my face.
Yeah.
And essentially, we're back to that argument when it comes to COVID, because even though it's invisible, you do have autonomy over your body. But if you're carrying a virus and there's a chance of you exposing someone else to that virus, then you have to consider them, because your rights stop where you can injure someone else. You don't have the right to injure someone else, which is what you're doing if you're knowingly spreading something.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, let us know if you have any questions. Also, I want to remind everybody to fill out the surveys on the Vision 2050 landing page. If you will drop it in the comment box so that you can fill them out right then and there.
And just a quick reminder for that one, that's our comprehensive plan update. So our land use cases are always a topsy-turvy thing to tune into on Tuesday afternoons, but they all come back down to what's written in our comprehensive plan and in Orange Code, and those things are being updated. So we want to make sure that if you're interested in those subjects, which I know you are, because I've had some really great interactions with people this week, that we are getting your voice in the updates for the code and for the comprehensive plan.
Yep. Awesome. So let's just chit chat a little bit about some of the conversations that have been coming to the office. We've received a lot of feedback and emails from constituents from the Avalon rural settlement area.
I love them.
And, you know, some of the stories that I hear of how their quality of life out there with horses and birds,
it's beautiful.
It's worth preserving.
It's beautiful. So the Avalon rural settlement is on the far west side of Orange County in a really beautiful, beautiful area of some natural topography. It's a little hilly. There's some old growth. There's still some agriculture out there. There's still, you know, our comprehensive plan requires the type of growth out there to be consistent with that rural character. Yeah. And so the conversations that we've had recently have really been about making sure that anything that we add to or that we evaluate goes by what we put in that comprehensive plan. And so my goal is really to also make sure that coming out of the boundaries of Avalon Rural Settlement or any of our rural settlements, that we're also really addressing that it shouldn't be like a light switch where you get to the edge, you hit a light switch, you're now, you know, in a high density situation, because that will also affect the quality of life. And unfortunately, because Avalon Rural Settlement is at the far corner of, or the far edge of Orange County, we don't have control over what happens on the other side of the county line. And what happens in Lake County does affect the people in that area. So there's an upcoming meeting in the Lake County Commission to evaluate and approve or not a plan for a development that's been, I think, in the works for several years in one iteration or another. And I just want to make sure that if you're tuning into this, that I have heard you, I agree with you that there should be some consistency of the density. And so I am going to go on Tuesday and make sure that I, at the very least, make my voice heard in that this is the way Orange County's plan for that area looks. This is what we've done to protect the Avalon Rural Settlement, and it would be a great benefit to the people of that area if Lake County had a match and that those were matching. And so, like I said, I don't have any voting rights on the other side of the line there, but at the very least, I want to make sure that I'm expressing my hopes and wishes that they respect the rural landscape of that area.
Absolutely, absolutely. You also had a really interesting meeting with some of the residents out in Lake Mabel.
Oh, this is another, I will tell you, so I know I'm biased, but District 1 is so beautiful. And yeah, so you know, I'm talking about the Avalon Rural Settlement, which is this really beautiful area where there are horse farms, and it's, you know, it's a lovely landscape. And then Lake Mabel is all the way far to the south, really very close actually to Bay Lake, to Lake Buena Vista. And Lake Mabel is actually, I think if you look, you know, a bazillion years ago to what the natural formation was, it falls in the same basin as the Butler Chain. And so the water quality of Lake Mabel, and they are also protected by a rural overlay. It is a pristine lake. It is beloved by the residents there, and they're very concerned about what's happening to water quality, much like residents from all over the county that we've heard from. And so having a conversation with them, you know, face to face, actually outside and socially distanced with masks this week was really great, because I was able to tell them about some of the things that we are trying to do here as far as scrutinizing and potentially revamping the fertilizer ordinance, making sure that we have a new tree protection ordinance, because all those things play into water quality. And then we're consistently really trying to find creative ways to do stormwater differently, because it's not working the way we're doing it. And so we find ourselves trying really hard to collect information and data and research about how we can transition Orange County from these traditional pollution gathering storm water bowls, which are those, you know, ponds, into something that looks more like a natural ecosystem, because we should be able to do that. We've removed so much of it that if we can do a constructed wetland that will help us prevent flooding, help us prevent the degradation of the natural water bodies, there's no reason why we're not doing that. And I asked very specifically for some evidence as to why we've done it the way we've been doing it, which is basically just to mow in a circle, dump a bunch of pollutants on top of the area so that it doesn't grow weeds, and then move out of there and come back in a few weeks and dump a bunch of. And I said, you know, if you can explain to me how that is a more cost-effective and beneficial way to do business in stormwater management, then I'll get on board. But I need some of that evidence. So we still haven't seen it. We're going to continue to work on that. That's on our, you know, very top, that top tier of things, that policy items that we're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. You also had a community meeting last night with the Planning Division, Lake Hancock PD.
Yeah, so this is another, and the community meeting was held by the applicant, a land use applicant, and the Planning Division, and we co-host it so we can make sure that we get the information out to residents, and we can invite residents to participate, because they need to participate. We need to be able to hear their observations.
Yeah.
There were, I don't know if it was 25, something like that, participants last night. I don't think they all got a chance to speak, but I was actually really encouraged by that, because sometimes there are very consequential development plans that are in place that I don't know if residents get that information directly from the applicant, and whatever the requirement is to post that application is moving forward is not getting to the people that are interested in the development. And so these were neighbors. These were people that lived right there, that had a wide variety of concerns, including stormwater runoff and water and the wetlands that are there, the natural landscape and some of the wildlife that was there. I heard a great deal of concern about safety and traffic, because there is part of the plan was for townhomes and for a preschool, and there was a lot of concern about how the in and out, the curb cuts were going to look. So it was very, very thoughtful. So if you're tuned into this now and you participated, stay in touch with us. I am so grateful for that contribution and participation. It's the reason why this job feels very rewarding, even on the most frustrating days, because we're on the same page. So we'll, you know, continue dialogue with that applicant to see if they can go back, listen, and accommodate what those questions were. I kind of felt like people weren't getting solid answers about whether or not their concerns could be addressed. So we'll keep asking, because I think that they have to come back and they have to tell me what those questions were and what they've modified as a result.
Yeah, and so we did stream that on Facebook if you're able to access the video link, and we'll also be adding it to NicoleWilson.org so you can share with anyone who may have missed the meeting or may not have English as their first language. So you can put different captions on there, so just share. And
and I just want to frame that conversation with the last BCC. I think if you tuned into our last Facebook, our office hours, I was coming off a sort of a challenging Board of County Commission meeting where there was a land use case in District 1 that involved some wetland and involved some really high density in a area that there wasn't a lot of infrastructure. And so my concerns, you know, and feedback from residents really put me in a position to make a motion for denial, and the county commission and the mayor without me went ahead, made their own motion for approval and passed it. And so, you know, each day now I sort of frame all my thoughts in that I was the person you hired to speak for you and your concerns about development and about the way that we're growing. And to have been bypassed for that approval was to me, it was a reframing of how I have to approach these meetings. And understanding also that I want to be clear with you that I am just one vote. So we will continue to be representative and to absolutely speak for the people of District 1. But if you need to reach out to the rest of the commission, you can do that, because they are also making decisions that are consequential.
Yeah. Next year's an election year, so I recommend you go back and watch how people have voted on the BCC Video Archive. It's very easy. You literally just Google Orange County BCC Video Archive. Yeah. It'll pop up first thing.
And even better than that, let's say that you don't know, you knew that the decision was made for approval in, you know, November of 2020 or May of 2019 or whatever. You can go in and look at the date, and it actually breaks out the cases. So you can go back and look, and you can say, oh, look, Reams Road, Develop Co. And, you know, go back and look at that is the perfect example for me of a decision that was made that I wish I'd been here. I wish there'd been time to educate everyone about what the consequences were going to be, because it is going to have devastating effects on the wildlife in that Lake Reams area, and that is a wildlife corridor. So, you know, they haven't broken ground yet there, but the approval happened before I got here. So I grieved for that. And then I switched my hat and put the, you know, commissioner hat back on and said, okay, what can we do from here? You know, is that trying to make sure that we've got eyes out there in District 1 who can see if the construction crews are not following code? Is there an opportunity to continue to negotiate with the developer about, you know, more buffers or more opportunities to protect the wetlands that are there? So we aren't going to give up, but I just want you to know what that process looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you did have a really interesting budget update that I know we've received hundreds, if not thousands, of emails about.
Thank you.
The Orange County Animal Services Shelter.
Yes. So this one went back to before my time also. And luckily, because I was like you all who are tuning in right now, very interested in our government, I recalled that there was an approval for a $2.5 million that was put into actually money for a design concept, architect, and the beginning processes of building a new shelter. And when we were discussing the budget, there was nothing in our budget that it was earmarked for the shelter. So having talked to a lot of constituents, and Lee shared some of the things that she had talked to people about that called the office and emailed the office, I went back and saw again, you know what, they did approve a $2.5 million to begin this process. So during the budget hearings, I brought it up and said, what happened to the $2.5 million that was earmarked before I got here? I think it was maybe
like 3 fiscal years ago, right? They
Whenever
started
it was.
putting away a little bit of money in the CIP fund.
It was definitely, but the $2.5 million for sure that is now back in was earmarked right before we got locked down. So it was, I think, January of 2020. And so lo and behold, our county administrator here was like, you know what, actually that is what happened. The county administration did a really great job of making sure that they communicated with everyone that was the case, and we will begin that process again without having to go back to the drawing board. Now it's going to take more than that to build the shelter, but this is at least money earmarked for the design and for moving forward the architectural contract to get that shelter moving.
Yes, we did receive a memo, and I think they were saying that from start to finish, it should be completed by 2026.
Okay.
So we'll keep you posted.
I'll hold them to it.
Yeah, because we still have other budget hearings coming up,
Yes.
so there'll still be some other conversations on the American Rescue Plan funding,
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
sure.
It'll be ongoing, but at the very least, that has been identified and will be in the next iteration. So that's really, really good news.
Absolutely.
And I thank you all for staying so engaged on that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so real quick, a traffic study. You had a meeting with our traffic engineering team this week, and right now I think one of the biggest things that we have to update is that they're looking to reduce the speed limit off of Winter Garden Vineland between Apopka Vineland and Chase Road to 45 miles per hour consistently.
Yeah, it's right now, it is just, people are flying, it's really dangerous. There's been two, at least more, maybe more, but I know the one that I came to our traffic engineering folks with were two really deadly accidents, and it's a residential area. There's no reason why it should be faster than 45, so they did confirm that. And so keep your eye out, because I'm sure when they drop that, there's going to be some enforcement, because they want residents to get used to that. And we'll get out, kind of a hard copy update also on that, so that the visual is around, because I do think part of the issue, obviously, with the speed is that we've got to have good posted speed limits, but then also it's education and making sure that people know, okay, that's changed, drop that speed.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be my only ask. Eventually on that road, we got to figure out some other speed calming devices.
Yeah, I think 45 is still really fast.
I do too.
I personally, I live on around Edgewater and Lee Road, and it's 45 there, and I don't feel safe driving 45. I actually go a lot slower, and people go 60 on that road.
And that's a problem, and that's why I said I think we have to continue to look. And one of the things really that I'm interested in doing is trying to increase the appearance right now, because it's very wide, and it was the original shortcut from Winter Garden or Windermere into the back of Disney. So Disney employees, that's how they went. Well, they've developed residential along that stretch of road. So now we've got, people who live there on one side and where they go shopping on the other side of the street, but they can't walk there.
Oh, no.
Because it's too dangerous. And so, we have students on this side and the school on that side. And so what my thought is, it's one of those, you've heard of roads that have to go on a diet. A diet, exactly, because right now it looks like I-4. It has that appearance, right? The medians are sort of clear of vegetation. It's just mowed grass, and it's wide, and it's got shoulders, so it looks like you should be able to get up to 55. So people do, because we are all a little bit subject to that visual cue, like, this is open road. I'm going to go ahead and pedal to the metal right here. Well, no, that's an elementary school right there, and that's a preschool right there. So we have to add those design features in order to trigger mentally for drivers. Oh, slow. There's kids here, because people they're not setting out to do that. They're just trying to get to where they're going. Yeah. And if we've built a road that looks like they should be flying, they're probably going to fly.
Yeah, and I mean, Florida's so flat. In other places where I know I come from Massachusetts, there's a lot of one-way streets. You really have to pay attention at all times. So I think that, that's why Orlando specifically is on the top 3 of the most dangerous cities for pedestrians, is if you just use your eyes and you look at the road, it does not look pedestrian friendly at all. Not even for other things like shade and just walkability and just the pleasant optics of it. Roads look like racetracks. Yeah. And so this is kind of interesting. I dug into that because we actually came in number 1, and I thought, okay, let me figure out what all they looked at and how they got this. Number 1 for the most dangerous pedestrian community, most deadly. And so I looked into it, and interestingly, it's a little deceiving, but it's still not great news. So the way that they came up with that was based on, the number of injuries or mortalities of pedestrians. And it looks really, really high because we don't have that many pedestrians, which is really sad, right? So even though the number of pedestrians, even though percentage-wise per capita per pedestrian, we are at the very top. Part of the reason why is because people they're scared to walk here. Yeah. That we haven't built those opportunities for them to walk to their schools and to their market and to their houses of worship or whatever else. And that is just
sort of a problem that was built into the design of the highway Florida. So we just have to rethink it and reframe it. And I think, you know, our municipal partners have been fantastic because they're on board. Talking to Winter Garden and Windermere, they get it. People want to ride their bikes on the trail, and people, you know, downtown Windermere, those are sandy roads that protect the lakes, and you can, you know, you can still run along there without being scared of someone running over you, because you can't speed on a bumpy, sandy road with comfortably, right? It's not comfortable for you. So our municipal partners are really on board, at least, you know, some of them are, and we have a lot of work to do in figuring out how to turn back the design on some of the big, wide runways that we built.
We all need to go on a road diet. For sure. And just one quick point I want to bring up to that, because before I started this job, I really compartmentalized issues and read in issues about, like, that I thought were just individual issues, but it really goes into, you know, equity and affordable housing conversations. If you look at our transportation sectors, and if we keep investing in this same urban sprawl model, we're not making an equitable community for all, because we're keeping people codependent on using cars, which now that's an expense, which means they can't afford other expenses and their quality of life is lower.
Well, we've isolated people too, right? Okay, so just think about different stages of your life. Before you turn 16, you don't have a driver's license. After you've, you know, potentially lost some eyesight due to, you know, medical conditions, you may lose your license. By financial means, you may not be able to have a license. I think many people that are engaged with their government are a little more, they're really interested in the walkable, likable for the health reasons and for the sort of good lifestyle purposes. But if you think about it, you're exactly right. That is also an equity issue, because how do you ask people to go to work if you have no way for them to get to an affordable home to their place of employment? And so, you know, to continue to build density far away from economic drivers with no option for bikeable, walkable, or transit, true transit, is just not planning to be equitable or really quality of life for even people who are not in a more challenging time of their lives. Because you think about, even if I can afford 17 cars, I still would really love to be able to walk my kids to school. And so, you know, I think those things they're a commonality when you talk to people. And I can talk to people from all of those different price points, and they're like, yeah, that is exactly what I want. We want a walkable, bikeable community. And then you go to Metro Plan, you go to the regional planning for transportation, and you hear from the other counties, and they hear the same things. And the Metro Plan staff does a really great job of bringing forward data and research. And so that road diet is actually something I learned about from Metro Plan, and they did research that said, you know, if you look across the nation, that Orange County roads are too fast. And I said, well, why would we just adjust that? Because right now, we now know, we have numbers and data over here that say we are the most dangerous. We have secondary data to that data that says it's because we don't have pedestrians because they're scared to walk. And then the third layer to that is that compared to other similarly sized counties or regions, we're too fast. We are not, you can't compare us to another county in the country and come up with a comparison.
But then you have the Spring Hill PD and this Lake Hancock, you know, PD coming in, and they're going to now probably say, we got to widen these roads to add capacity to these roads.
Because
and
it's like, but
there's no buses out there. There's no buses out there.
You know, in all fairness, for the people who tuned in or participated in that meeting or some of these development meetings, there are two things that are really an important takeaway that I want to make sure that I'm explaining. One of them is our infinitely wise Florida legislature kneecapped local government and said, oh, you know, when it comes to giving out development permissions, you cannot consider traffic as a reason for denial. And so there is a prohibition, like there is a you cannot use traffic as a reason. So, and I can get that exact language out because I think I'm giving it a really bad paraphrasing, but essentially we're not allowed to say denied for traffic. layer that, so that's your legislature. So ask them, if they can help you fix that, or
also
vote.
An election year next
right,
year.
Also, layered on top of that is that if you go back, and I did it this week, and I read the comprehensive plan and the master plan that was put into place for Horizon West. So I'm talking to you, my friends out in Horizon West. In the comprehensive plan is like a designated entire 3 paragraphs for being ready for transit and opportunities for transit and connectivity. Connectivity is a goal, and transit was a goal. And you know what part of it they really haven't managed to provide? Connectivity and transit. So the master plan of Horizon West, and I love having these conversations with people because there really is some very interesting history. The master plan was put into place long before, let me think about this for a second. You were probably born, I think it was 95?
Yeah, because it's every 30 years, right?
In Horizon West master plan, when you look at it on paper, there's some really great things about it.
Yeah.
But it required being strict to that plan, and Orange County wasn't. And I mean, prior to my time, there were many, many, many deviations from that master plan. And on top of the many development deviations was the one for transportation and transit. And that's why we're really, the infrastructure component of this is more than just a conversation about Horizon West, because it's true for across the county, but it's very interesting in Horizon West because it's happening in fast forward. And seeing this lag in infrastructure and understanding that even adding a lane isn't what was promised to people out there.
Yeah. The last point I'll make on this is, things could be better. If you go to other countries, and we always bring that up because you have to have other perspectives of other people who have figured this out long before we started paving everywhere. You build a community around the intention of building community, right? And I think when you look at the scope of our transit and our comprehensive plan and how we develop our communities, that isolation part is so dangerous. Because what I'm seeing is we're a first world country that has some of the highest suicide rates. This September is Suicide Awareness Month. We have some of the highest suicide rates in children. In children and teens, and you wonder, is it social media? Well, it also is
they can't get to a park. That they can't get to a park.
They can't get to a park. They can't cross a street without 9 lanes.
They don't have any more forests to play in. They don't have any more open space, open fields. No, it's all of those things. And isolation can really be, you don't have to really be creative to draw the line back to how somebody gets around their community. And being able to walk and bike to all the things you need is connection. That's how you build that community. So it's absolutely you can't isolate it. And I think a lot of people who only have heard bits and pieces about my goals and about our office and about what we're focused on are like, oh, they're anti-growth. I'm like, that's not it. They're not listening. It's growing in a way that we're not dismissing all the needs.
Yes.
So, density is absolutely critical to a healthy community and a growing community. And I'm not scared of density, but my goodness, if we're going to go high density, make it in a place where people can get to their employer, that they can get to their school, that they can get to some form of art and culture, that they can get to some open spaces and some fresh air and all of those things without being in a car for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you might as well not do it at all if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Those people are just isolated unless they have a car.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for entertaining those points that I wanted to make, because
I get a little bit hot about it because it just feels I feel very defensive when people are like, oh, she's anti-growth. I'm like, that's not it. You're not listening. I'm anti-growth in places that were designated as rural.
Yeah, I mean, when I studied in Italy, there was a main road that had all their little shops and mom and pop shops where people lived upstairs, and then their grandparents lived on the floor above that.
Yeah.
And then in the community around it, there would be a lot of multi-home residential areas with little nook and cranny, like little grocery stores, like convenience stores nestled in.
And that was what the inside, the Horizon West Village centers.
Yeah.
I mean, if I showed you, and we can share all of these, I think we've got them to share. That was the concept, that inside of the center, there would be the highest density, because that is where there would be the places to shop, and potentially that's where we have the a little daycare facility here, and a bank over here, an employer, and so they would all be. And then as it went out, you had, more and more spacing really if somebody wanted a more rural, or what do you call the other, country estate, the RCE zone, as you move out. And I think it's like I said, I think if you go back and look at the original plans, they had that in mind. But because it wasn't one developer, that it's many, you've driven down through that area, there's many hands in that pot. There's many pockets involved. And so the way that it's been sliced and diced and sold off and revamped has not fulfilled that promise. And so that's really what we're trying to get back to out there. And so, I feel really fortunate because we have really great community partners out there that we can dialogue with about anything coming or going, and trying to find, how to navigate moving forward, because it is really just a fast pace. So we'll continue to talk about this. And, it makes me think about something that I do want to kind of clarify. In the hearing that happened last week, where I was trying to make sure that the piece of property that was being transitioned from rural agricultural to single family residential, that when they did it, that they didn't just flatten it, right? So what is the cheapest way to come in and build a like a subdivision, exactly. The cheapest way to do it is to just level it, to grade it and grub it. And grading it means leveling it for the soil, and grubbing it means taking out every bit of vegetation. So, if you go onto an aerial view, actually go into the property appraiser's website, because it's really the best one, because then you can actually see the lines.
Get a glass of wine first.
You can see the lines, and you'll see where there's large swaths of what look like
pure sugar sand.
Because it is, that area is up some really valuable upland area, and they can do that because then they can put their houses closer together. That piping and trimming it out is all less expensive. And my feedback to this applicant was really about the fact that if you did the numbers and the certain amount of houses that were being asked for, and the number of acres that they had in the plan, and then you factored in what they knew were wetlands, or they looked like wetlands at a desktop view, that couldn't work. It couldn't work without them taking the wetland. And so my comments about the ability for developers to just scrape the surface of a landscape over 100 acres and just scrape it clean of anything there is building a hellscape. And it doesn't provide any character. It doesn't leave any character. And so even if you take out the natural world, and you can't, right? That's silly. Don't ever think about that. But even if you remove that part of it, what kind of a sales team do you have that's like, no trees. We don't need trees. We'll just flatten it all.
We'll go back in and plant these tiny little trees that are like this big.
And one of the things that makes West Orange County and some of the areas where they've done a really good job, I think, developing in Horizon West, is that it is a topographical, it's hilly. It's beautiful. There's some really beautiful areas. And so, there's this misconception out in the world that was all, nothing but old dead orange groves, and it was all. And so they can just scrub it flat, and they don't have to come to us for permission for that. And so when I discovered that the mass grading permits were done without board supervision, without board approval, I raised the red flag. I was like, why are we not having an opportunity to scrutinize this for things like the wetlands that are on there, or any other considerations, any canopy, any of it? And I think it was
and they were like, vote yes anyway.
Yeah, I think it was right. So that's where that hellscape conversation came from. And I'm going to continue to ask the question. I think you vote people into office at this level in local government for local issues, which includes things like not taking a hilly area in beautiful West Orange County and making it all one level, and then they wonder why there's water issues, why we've got standing water everywhere. It's because you completely change the topography and landscape of an area where God figured out how to get the water from here to there.
Yes.
So, just doing God's work here.
And it's not like that in other places. It's, I just came from Massachusetts. I flew over, and if I could, I wish I took a photo of flying over Orlando compared to there. Tons of rocks, tons of hills, but tons of trees to the point where you can't even see the houses. Beautiful
Canopy.
Old growth and canopy. Here, it just looks like urban sprawl.
Yeah. Well, and I think, for people who are tuning in for the first time and wondering about sort of the discussion that goes along with the tree protection ordinance that we're advocating for and pushing for right now. And part of the issue is, of course, retaining that old growth, because you're talking about hundreds of years. And in our lifetimes, to see a one-day's bulldozer take out the cumulative grandfather trees of generations, and knowing that even if they plant a great little whatever, that isn't going to help us clean our air, or it's not going to help provide any shade for your children or grandchildren, maybe your grandchildren if it's a fast growing tree. It's not going to help hold the soil from erosion in a storm. And so all of those things go into that tree ordinance. It's not just about retaining the aesthetic of a tree. I would do it for that. I would do it just to retain the aesthetic of a tree. But it also, that's our lungs. We don't get air without trees. So, I want to make sure that for the people that are tuning in that aren't necessarily environmentalists, that's fine. I don't think we should all have the same passions, but I want you all to know that it's bigger than just the environmental component of it. It's really about health also.
Yeah. Well, the last conversation, which we brought up on multiple occasions, about next year being an election year, can't have an election year without knowing what district you're in. So redistricting is coming up.
This is the other thing we briefly brought up last week that was discussed at the Board of County Commissioners the week before. We as a county are divided into districts based on where you live, and that is who goes on your ballot. And I think it's really, really important that the public knows at each stage of this what's happening, because of these local issues, and because it's important that you have a voice in this. There are constitutional parameters to redistricting, and all of those things have been really well addressed in the ordinance. Excuse me, I've got like a little tickle in my throat. In the ordinance that it was passed. What happens from here, moving into the next phase, is that there's a redistricting board that each one of the commissioners had nominees that sit on the board, and the mayor had 3 at large. 2 of those are co-chairs. That board goes out, has public engagement and meetings, and goes over maps. There will also be a public engagement with a map that you can use for your own comments to the board. And what's really great about that is this year there's a technology that we've never had. And redistricting only happens every 10 years. The census comes out. This past census was delayed because of COVID, but we got the data will be coming in. They're extrapolating what we need to be able to take forward in the process of redistricting. But they basically have a map that is public facing and allows the public to look at that map and really consider very closely where those lines should be and how those lines will affect communities. And so one of the things that constitutionally we can't do is we can't divide a municipality. We can't divide something of cultural significance. And the idea there is you can't dilute a vote, right? You don't want to weaken someone's community voice. And so it requires a lot of input, and that's something that's going to be ongoing. I did raise my concerns about the discretion of the co-chairs, because my feeling about it was that there needed to be a balance of power on the board.
Yeah.
One of the co-chairs was a co-chair for the CRC, and there was some times where I felt like there were people that were sort of quieted on the CRC over issues and topics, but that is a much broader array of things that come forward. And the CRC is actually our Charter Review Commission. This will be a much more narrow scope. Redistricting is a very singular task, but a very complex task, because you do have to look at that population growth and then take into consideration the historical and cultural and ethnic communities that make up our great county.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. We're going to keep reminding people, because when those maps come out, it's going to be really fast. So they're going to meet in each district once at a public meeting. There's going to be a virtual option, and there will be this interactive mapping that can be used for a public submittal. And then it comes back to the board in January for board approval. So it is a really, really, really fast.
Yep.
And I want to thank the people who volunteer from District 1 to help with that.
Yeah, and we'll definitely try to keep you engaged. I think since they will be streaming it on Facebook, we'll share and co-host potentially and be doing tons of social media. And so I'm super excited to learn about this process. Last thing, we had interns start this week, and I'm super excited because we have an incredible team.
I'm so excited. To me, the idea of, to me, it makes it feel so much more like an office. And it was really hard to transition in this role, because coming from more collaborative settings in work, and feeling a little isolated because the commissioners can't talk to each other. There's sunshine rules, that's how that should be. And then I love my team, but having the fresh perspectives and some really great research brains and some people that really love doing this type of work. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. Yesterday, one of the interns asked me, what's the greatest thing that you've ever done? And I thought creating an internship program in my previous occupation and in this one, because interns bring so much fresh perspective. And they teach me as I'm trying to teach them, and together we learn so much. And so, we had interns start this semester in policy, in social media, community outreach, and also in administrative needs. Next semester, we'll be taking more applicants, so put it on your calendar around December to start emailing District 1 with your application.
And for my interns that I know that have moved on to the next semester, thank you, and stay in touch. We will always be in your corner and cheerleading for you. And, I feel like you're exactly right, Lee, that the idea of a political office being a place where we can also really increase civic engagement and that educational component, and knowing that, who knows, maybe we're launching the next, political leader of the future, or the next great county administrator. And so that's,
how cool would that be?
Well, that's what's needed. That's what's needed. We talk about these problems. None of them aren't solvable with the right people in the right places with the right goals.
Yeah. This Saturday, as an FYI, is the Autism Awareness Walk over at the Orange County Convention Center by the West Concourse area. So please RSVP. Let us know if you have any questions for that. We've been posting it on social media for that. And then any Labor Day comments or stay safe?
I forgot. I totally forgot that it was Labor Day. So you said that at the beginning of this. It's been so busy that sometimes that calendar just kind of, it gets away from me a little bit. But that's a good sign. That just means that we're moving around here. If you have any comments or questions, send them on in. This is our time to share with you. So hopefully, if not now, if you're watching this later or hear this later, it's never too late. I love opening that door for the next conversation.
Yeah, so listen to this podcast, because people call it a podcast.
However you want to do it. Exactly. I don't mind that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And please be safe for Labor Day. We really appreciate you all. And
yes, be safe. I do think it's one of those where I think this is a holiday where a lot of people are on the roads and on the water. And so just, be careful out there.
Have a good night, everyone. Happy Thursday.